Hey Ryan, it's Tolan. So, welcome to our first video where we're going to start building out the tool set that you might think about when using Python. So, when I was learning Python, I jumped right into a course and I didn't have any background on what's called the command line interface or the command line prompt. If you're using a Mac or Linux, that might be known as the terminal. But essentially, it's the tool that you'll use to move around in your directories and the tool that we're going to use oftentimes to activate Python or a Python script. So in this video, I think we're going to look at how to see which directory we're in, how to change directories, how to move up or down within directories, and then how to exit out of a directory. Pretty simple, but it will be, I think, quite useful when we actually start writing code in Python. So with that, let's get started.
In order to get started with writing command line code, we're going to open up the command prompt. The way I like to do that is by hitting the Windows key. That will bring up the Start menu, and then you can just start typing in a command prompt. It will often come up here in one of your best matches. You don't have to use your mouse like I'm about to do, but you could instead use your keyboard. Click on that, it will open up the command prompt, which is one of Microsoft's ways of allowing us to use a CLI or command line interface. So here we have our directory. It won't always show the entire directory. If our directory is super long and our file path is super long, it may just show part of it. Which brings us to our first command. So if you want to know what the current directory is, you would just type the letter C and the letter D. So cd will show you the current directory. Interestingly enough, if you want to move forward or backward, we're going to use that same command, C or D. So let's go ahead and type cd, and then we would type whatever folder or subfolder we'd want to go to. So in order to do that, I happen to know that my computer has a folder called desktop, or rather, let's do documents. So documents, and now you can see that our current directory has changed from just tat, which are my initials. Your username would be probably different than TAT. But now we're in the users tat and in the documents folder. Another way to kind of think about this is by opening up the File Explorer. So I'm going to hit Windows E. That will launch the File Explorer, and then we can go to this PC. And you can kind of think about the command prompt as allowing you to access this File Explorer, but using the kind of the back end rather than the front end of point and click like you would with your mouse. So we've gotten into this documents folder. Here, let me make this a little bit smaller. Let's think about what might be in the documents folder. Now, one way to do that would be to launch File Explorer like we have here and to go in, and you'd see all of these folders. But you can actually just do that directly in the command prompt. So in order to see what the directory of the documents folder is, you type dir on Windows. And once you've typed that, you hit the enter key, and it will show all of these files and folders that you have. Now, you kind of get to see my dirty laundry, so to speak. Technically, I'm not the most organized person. So you'd get to see all of these folders and the subfolders and the files and my terrible naming conventions. But, you know, thus is life. So you get to kind of explore my life choices. Obviously, on your computer, it would be slightly different. So let's say that we were, again, we're going to type cd, and we are in the documents folder. We type dir, and that shows the directory of all the folders and files within that. Well, let's say that we wanted to go to let's go to Boston Housing and hope that's not too terrible. So we would type cd and then the Boston Housing. We're going to try to spell things correctly, but I'm notoriously bad at spelling. So you hit enter, and now you're in that, and we could type dir, and you would see that it essentially doesn't have a whole lot. So we go to Boston Housing, and it has one folder. Now, what if we want to get out of this Boston Housing folder. How would we do that? Well, you type the letters C and D for current directory, and then you type 2 periods. So CD, 2 periods, and watch where our current directory is now. It's users, tat, documents, Boston Housing. If we type CD and then 2 dots, our current directory, as shown here, is actually now users, tat, and documents. So before it was users, tat, documents, Boston Housing, and now it's one level above that. So let's say that we want to, not do that. Windows 10 confuses me sometimes. Here we're going to, let's say that we wanted to go up. So I'm gonna hit Alt up. Let's say that we wanted to go into this, this housing folder. So obviously in the File Explorer, we could come in here, and it has 2 bedrooms, a sweet deal in Beacon Hill, Boston, Massachusetts. So let's go in and do it in the command line. We're going to go ahead and we're going to go to housing, hit enter, and what went wrong? Well, we forgot to type CD. So now we're going to type it correctly, and now we're in the housing folder. Again, if we want to go up, we type CD and go down. Now let's go, instead of going into our documents folder, let's go to, let's go one level above. So we're going to hit CD again and go back in this, and then we're going to type dir for a directory. We have all these different folders. Now let's go, say, to the desktop. So we're going to type CD desktop, hit enter, and if we minimize these for a minute, you'll notice that there's really nothing on our desktop except for the recycling bin. So if we bring these back up, and we type dir for our desktop, it should really show, it should show nothing. However, if we were to come over here and we were to create a new folder, let's go to new folder. Now we have, let's rename this folder, test folder. So now if we type CD, we're still in our desktop, and we're going to type dir. Now you see that there's this test folder. And what if we were to create another one? Obviously, we could use a keyboard shortcut, but why do that? Why show off when we don't have to? So again, we're going to call this test folder 2. Here, now if we hit dir, now there are 2 test folders. That's kind of cool. So let's go into test folder 1, and let's go over here, and we'll try to make it a little more readable. Let's say that we're going to click in here and hit Control-Shift-New for a new folder, and we'll say layer 1. And then here we'll say other. So if we want to go into this folder, we're going to go ahead and we're going to go and we're going to say, well, we're in our desktop, so we want to change directories. And what do we want to change it to? Well, we have a couple of different options. Now we have test folder, and then test folder 2. I want to go into test folder, so I'm going to type test folder, and now we're in. We're going to hit dir for the directory, and it shows that there are these kind of 2 commands, but then also the layer 1 folder and the other folder. So let's just make a bunch of folders. Let's say layer 2. Control-Shift-New. Layer 3. As you'll discover in our videos, I'm not the best typer. If that's even a proper word. Layer 4, I think we're on. Layer 5. And then here, let's make a text file, because I love text files, text document. This is a text file. Yo. All right, so our mission, if you choose to accept it, is to go into layer 5 and open up this text file. Now, obviously, this isn't meant to be demeaning. You can stop the video whenever you want, but I found it super useful to kind of practice these things, because when we actually start writing Python code, you're going to want to be able to go into folders, get out of folders, go into subfolders, call specific files. So that's kind of why I propose that we practice this a little bit. So now, obviously, we could be in our test folder, and we could say, well, we want to go to CD layer 1, and then we could go to CD layer 2. And if we spell things correctly, we could iterate through this process, and that would be fine. Eventually, we would get to our specific file. But kind of what I like doing sometimes is, if I know the file path, right, if I can verify the file path, what I prefer to do is actually kind of combine them all together. So we would say something to the equivalent of like this file path. So we want to do users, tat, desktop, a test folder, layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4. Just a side note, you'll notice that there's sometimes forward slashes, like backslashes here, and when we actually write our specific code, like directory or whatever, like cd, let's say cd layer 3, we can do forward slash layer 4. When we're writing in our command prompt, we generally want to use forward slashes, and then the system will kind of change it to backslashes. So we're in layer 4, and let's do cd layer 5. This is our this is our life for the time being. Let's bring it up a little bit. I'm having some major issues today. Okay, so layer 5, and let's go to cd. This is a test file yo.txt. Obviously, that didn't work, but we found that file there. All right, so let's say that we want to get out of that. There's a couple ways to do it. Well, first, let's show our cd. If we wanted to get out of it, you could say CLS for closing all of that, and it would kind of close all of the other documents. But you would just, I mean, the easy way to do it is just do that a bunch of times. And then we'd have to go back to tat. Oops. We do cd dr, and we're back to kind of where we all started. Again, so we looked at a couple things. We looked at the cd to show our current directory. We looked at things like the dir to show what's in each directory or each current directory. We looked at cd desktop to move forward, or cd to move double dot to move back. One thing that I find is kind of cool is you can actually use tab to autocomplete. So you could type cd and then you could type the word d, and then if you hit tab, it will cycle through the words that start with D or whatever letter combination that you have. Sometimes that's super useful. So we could say go to our desktop, or cd back, and then cd desktop documents dir. All right, so that's it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we will probably go over how to use the command line interface of a Mac or a Unix machine. Obviously, if you're not interested in using Mac or Unix, you can skip over that video. And then we'll get into kind of where you can go and download Python. So I hope this was useful for you. If you have any questions or suggestions, go ahead and add them in the comments section below. We've provided a few links for some additional resources that you might want to check out. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again soon. Cheers.